Picture this. A storm god tears open the belly of a primordial sea dragon, splitting her corpse in half to create the sky and earth, blood and chaos, divine warfare. This is how the ancient Babylonians said the world began. Now listen to this. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Same region, same era, radically different stories. Here's what most people miss. These aren't independent accounts. Genesis 1 is responding to that dragon slaying myth. The differences aren't accidental. They're the whole point. The biblical authors didn't ignore the dominant creation story of their world. They knew it, engaged it, and systematically dismantled it, not by arguing against it, but by telling a different kind of story entirely. Let's look at what the Babylonians believed. The Enuma Elish, meaning when on high, was the creation story of the ancient Near East. Composed between the 18th and the 12th centuries BCE, it was recited annually at Babylon's New Year festival. The narrative begins with primordial chaos. Tiamat, the saltwater dragon goddess, represents the untamed sea. Younger gods disturb her, conflict erupts. The storm god Marduk volunteers to fight Tiamat, but demands supreme authority in exchange. He wins. He splits her body like a shellfish. One half becomes the sky, the other the earth. Creation through violence. Divine corpses recycled into cosmic architecture. This was the cultural backdrop when Genesis was written. Now here's where it gets interesting. Listen to how Genesis 1 begins. Both texts open with temporal clauses. Enuma Elish, when on high the heavens had not been named. Genesis, when God began creating the heavens and the earth. Both feature wind or spirit moving over chaotic waters. Both describe a firmament, an inverted dome holding back waters above from waters below. And the Hebrew word for the deep, Tehom, is etymologically related to Tiamat. The at ending is simply a feminine suffix in Akkadian, same root. The chaos dragon becomes mere deep water. These parallels are too specific to be coincidental. But wait, did the Israelites even know these combat myths? The evidence is clear, they did. Psalm 74, you crushed the heads of Leviathan. Isaiah 51, you hacked Rahab in pieces, pierced the dragon. Job 26, by his power he stilled the sea. His hand pierced the fleeing serpent. These aren't foreign imports. Israelite poets used dragon-slaying imagery freely. They knew the combat mythology of their neighbors intimately. This matters because Genesis 1's silence on divine combat isn't ignorance, it's a choice. The biblical authors could have told a battle story. They deliberately didn't. So we have the parallels. Now let's examine what's missing, because that's where the theology lives. Where listeners expected cosmic battle, Genesis offers only a word: let there be light. No struggle, no resistance, no rival. There's no theogony, no story of God's birth or origin. Theogony means divine birth story. Marduk is a latecomer god who must prove himself through combat. The biblical God simply exists without explanation or biography. And there's no meta-diving realm, that's primordial chaos from which gods emerge in polytheistic systems. In Enuma Elish, even the gods come from something. In Genesis, God precedes everything. Look at the cosmological structure both texts share: an inverted dome, waters held above, waters pulled below, a habitable bubble in between. Marduk creates this by splitting Tiamat's corpse. Divine flesh becomes cosmic architecture. Genesis uses the identical structure but removes the divine body. The firmament is just a firmament. The waters are just waters. Same cosmology, radically different meaning. The structure is borrowed. The mythology is stripped away. Scholars call this demythologization, removing mythological elements while retaining the cosmological framework. In polytheistic systems, natural forces are gods. Tiamat isn't just in the sea, she is the sea. The sun god Shamash isn't behind the sun, he is the sun. Genesis de-divinizes nature systematically. Water is just water, not a divine adversary to be conquered. The sun and moon are called the greater light and the lesser light, pointedly unnamed because their names were divine titles in surrounding cultures. This isn't careless, it's surgical. Every element that carried divine status in Mesopotamian religion gets demoted to mere creation. The line between creator and creation becomes absolute. The method of creation reveals the deepest contrast. Enuma Elish, creation through violence, dismemberment, the recycling of divine corpses. Genesis, creation through speech. Let there be light. And there was light. Even similar Egyptian accounts, where the god Ptah creates through speaking, still includes sexual procreation among the gods. Genesis stands alone in its purely verbal creation. The theological implication, God's will is sufficient. No struggle required, no resistance possible, no rival exists. The word goes forth and reality conforms. Power without effort, authority without contest. The contrast in divine nature runs even deeper. Mesopotamian gods are born, they have parents, siblings, rivalries, they fight and can be killed. They emerge from chaos and remain limited by forces beyond themselves. The biblical God has no origin story, no family tree, no rivals to defeat or appease, no meta-diving realm constraining divine action. This isn't a more powerful God among gods. This is a different category entirely. The God of Genesis exists beyond and before all things. Not the strongest player in the game, but the one who invented the game itself. So what does all this mean for how we read Genesis today? Genesis 1 isn't trying to be a scientific account of origins. It's a theological polemic, a deliberate counter-narrative to the dominant creation story of the ancient world. The original audience would have heard the echoes of Enuma Elish immediately. They would have recognized every deliberate departure. The text is half of a conversation. Reading Genesis 1 in isolation misses the argument entirely. When ancient texts seem primitive, ask what conversation they're entering, and the sophistication often lies in what they reject, not just what they affirm. The biblical authors faced a choice. They could ignore the Enuma Elish, pretend the dominant cultural narrative didn't exist. They could adopt it, tell the same story with different names. They could attack it directly, write a polemic against Babylonian religion. They did none of this. Instead, they transformed it. They kept the cosmological structure, the dome, the waters, the ordered creation. They removed the mythology, the divine combat, the theogony, the divinized nature. Same skeleton, different soul. This is sophisticated theological argument disguised as narrative, not primitive mythology struggling towards science, but careful, intentional rewriting of cultural assumptions about gods, nature, and power. The echoes make the silence speak.